On the first day I entered the Pei clan school, I glanced at Pei Sanlang a little longer. He told me with his eyes, a person should know their own place. Too much worry, though I was determined to attach myself to a young master from a powerful and noble family, yet I knew that some could be reached, while others were simply not a fit. My father's list didn't even include him. The day Pei Erlang agreed to betroth himself to me, that arrogant, proud Pei Sanlang stood outside my courtyard all night. With red-rimmed eyes, "What power, fame, and wealth you seek, when did I ever make you look down on any of them? Please, look at me again." 1. The Pei clan was a prestigious and illustrious family, with bells sounding and cauldrons arrayed, a household handed down through poetry and ritual. My father had gone to immense lengths to get me into the Pei family school. Sitting at the farthest desk, I was still closer to the front door than to the teacher on the platform. Fortunately, I wasn't here to study. In my whole life, Yuan Jingshu, the only thing I had in common with books was my name. I was here to find a husband. In this clan school, there were all kinds of notable figures everywhere. If I could latch onto just any one of them, it would be enough to help my little aristocratic clan take another step forward. Father said that if I succeeded, my contribution would be no less than that of my brothers who worked hard studying. So after I came of age, the lychees from Lingnan were sent to my room first, and in summer the ice was brought to me first as well. He also spent money hiring people to spread some rumors that Miss Six of the Yuan family was beautiful and well-mannered, with the grace of Banji and the bearing of Xieting. Apart from being beautiful, the rest was all nonsense. I came here beaming with delight, true to expectation. As soon as I arrived I heard people talking about me. "So this is that Yuan Liunyang, she really is beautiful." Shuru was also praising me from the side, and in my buoyant mood, I started boasting wildly, "Your wife, will surely find the best husband." After saying that, I became somewhat sober. The best? Even my father wouldn't dare think that way. The best? Wouldn't that be the third young master of the Pei family? When did you come to have him in your heart, lady? Even Xiaoru didn't know. Fortunately, there was no one around. I hurriedly covered Shiru's mouth. Pei family's third young master is renowned far and wide, yet I've never even met him. How could he possibly be in my heart? Before I could think much further, I realized the Pei family clan school's reputation was not exaggerated. Others were truly studying, while I was truly clueless. I had no choice but to put my thoughts aside and focus on studying. Among the clan school, there were girls like me who were hopeless fools. And naturally there were also proper, ambitious girls. Yi Ruhua was one of the best among them. Though she was reserved, she had no trouble getting along with others, yet she didn't seem to be close with the other girls. I had originally thought she was too haughty to associate with empty-headed girls. Unexpectedly, I merely tentatively shared some pastries I'd brought from home and said a few soft words to her, and she became somewhat different toward me. I secretly touched my face. So my charm was this great. Come to think of it, it's no wonder father's scheme would fail. As soon as class was over, I drifted to the front to find her, which also let me get closer to those important figures my father had calculated. Hua, this is pine nut and lily pastry made by my mother." She immediately took it, but the young master standing nearby crossed his arms and spoke coolly, "Missy doesn't seem able to eat lilies." My mind was bubbling away like water boiling. This young gentleman is quite handsome indeed, and sitting in our home section, though I don't know which Pei he is. Yi Ruhua gave me an apologetic smile. I looked at her in confusion. "Why didn't you tell me if you couldn't eat it?" It's not like I was forcing her to. The moment I ran into a handsome man, my competitive brain kicked in. Could this be some kind of tactic? Yi Ruhua looked at me, her eyes shimmering with tears. I didn't want Shushu to lose interest. TSK. She was so gentle, it didn't seem like a tactic. I smiled back softly. That's also something I didn't consider. May I ask who this young master is? It seemed I had changed the subject a bit too abruptly, and Yi Ruhua paused for a moment. The young master looked at Yi Ruhua, then at me, his brows and eyes flowing with elegance and grace, though there was a somewhat meaningful look in his eyes. Pei Hongju, the third young master of the Pei family, the second legitimate son of the eldest branch, long known as a child prodigy. His background was far too noble. He was not on father's list of targets. My mind instantly cleared up. and the water stopped bubbling, so it's the third young master. Yuan Lianyang greets you. Yi Ruhua came to her senses and wanted to introduce us, but I quickly turned the conversation back to her. Hua, from now on, just tell me what you can't eat, and it won't be like today again, okay? I was afraid you'd be unhappy, so I wanted to keep it to myself first. Yi Ruhua spoke softly and gently. No matter how artfully and melodiously I tried to be, I couldn't match someone so naturally gifted, so I had no choice but to keep my voice low. Pei Sanlang was still standing nearby, staring. What was there to look at? Without the halo, I noticed right away the look he stabbed me with just now. I didn't do anything. I only asked him one question. No one had ever looked at me with eyes like that, as if looking at some filthy thing he found beneath his notice. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got, until my face turned red, but I didn't dare glare at him, so I could only sulkily return to the back row. I'd wasted the chance to get to know the other young masters in the front row too. Aside from the Pei family itself, the front row was filled with the sons of top-tier aristocratic and powerful clans. Yi Ruhua was assigned to the front by the teacher because of her excellent grades. It said that her family comes from humble origins, with only her father serving in the court as a minor official. In terms of family background, she doesn't even compare to mine. The place I was sitting was the worst spot in the classroom. I couldn't compete in terms of family background, and I couldn't compete in terms of knowledge either. A beauty's life had never been so frustrating. I increasingly understood father's plans. As a small gentry family, we could neither lower our dignity like the humble commoners nor put on airs like the grandees. Caught between the two, it was unbearably awkward. Day after day, he drove my elder brothers to study hard, while also pinning his hopes on me to marry into a great noble family. It's all just so that, in the future, we can rise a little higher. A phoenix's tail is still part of the phoenix. I studied hard for quite a while. I found that it was still better to work hard at building a good relationship with Yi Ruhua. I know the best way is naturally to rely on my own ability and have the teacher promote me as well. The problem is, I just don't have that kind of ability. Stairs are stairs, I suppose. At worst, it's just Pei Hongju alone. People who are climbing upward are bound to suffer humiliation, but I was still too heartbroken. So when I got home at night, I asked mother to give me an extra bowl of old hen soup just for myself. The elder brother stared at me blankly as I took 2 big gulps of soup. Is Lianyang unhappy at the Pei clan school? I sighed. How could I be happy? Everyone is better than me. If you're unhappy, then don't go anymore. Hiss. Father reached out with 2 fingers and tapped him on the head. No shame, and then strive with courage. Is that how this phrase is used? But I obediently nodded at father, then rubbed the top of my elder brother's head. Second brother gave me a heavy look, and I rolled my eyes at him. When a man reaches his age, he just loves to act deep. As children, weren't we all raised drooling? I suddenly thought that Pei Sanlang had also grown up this way, drooling at night, lying in bed. I thought back on the day, and in my drowsy haze all that remained was his smooth, jade-like face. Then I suddenly recalled his sharp gaze, and shuddered in shock. I stopped thinking about it. Altogether, 3 people of this dynasty value beauty. With my charm and social grace, I quickly built good relationships with my classmates in the clan school. Yi Ruhua was still the most important among them. The little lady had both ability and a good temper. I couldn't understand why they wouldn't befriend her. The Meng Qianqian in the front row said mysteriously to me, "Yuan Lianyang, you'll understand once enough time has passed." It wasn't until I became more familiar with Yi Ruhua that I understood. On the battlefield of finding a husband, she was practically my natural nemesis. A strong-willed, talented woman is the perfect counter to a pretty but empty-headed woman. She conversed eloquently with the young lords about the country and the realm, while we little ladies could only stand aside and talk about rouge and powder. I swept my gaze over the crowd in the distance one by one. Pei Sanlang's mocking gaze still lingered before my eyes. After that, I avoided looking at him, even though he was widely acknowledged as the most handsome man among men. Meng Qianqian bumped my shoulder. "You understand, right?" I deflated. "I understand. In a scene like this, even if I forced my way in by relying on my good relationship with Yi Ruhua, I'd only end up embarrassing myself. Relying on others always comes with risks." Pei Jianyang waved at me. and I went with them to tour the garden as expected of the Pei family, the foremost clan. Their residence was nearly on par with the imperial palace, and the gardens were even more exquisite and ingeniously designed. We embroidered patterns and traced kites in the pavilion, with Pei Junyang sitting right next to me. Sixth sister, you're amazing, you can do everything so well, I smiled gently. It's because nine ladies' silk thread colors are so well matched. Pei Junyang is the young lady of the main Pei family, so of course I have to flatter her. You don't need to go out of your way to praise me, third brother always says. I'm lazy and incapable, bad at calligraphy, painting, embroidery, and needlework alike. Pei Junyang looked up at the sky. But I really am not as good as Yi Ruhua. As she spoke, she probably added on her own, and not as good as you. I understood at once. It turned out she was even privately comparing her younger sister with her female classmates. It seems that Pei Sanlang admires Yi Ruhua, so he cannot stand me using his beloved as a means of currying favor. I pouted. It's not like I borrow it every day, just every now and then. Pei Sanlang is so petty, talking bad about me behind my back. Third brother. A warm breath drew close from behind Pei Sanlang, who came and went like a ghost. I scooted a little to the side and lowered my head to pick up the embroidery on the stone table and look at it. This embroidery was truly exquisitely embroidered. Pei Hongju, however, turned sideways to face me and slightly bent at the waist. Miss Yuan, I inclined my body in return. Third young master, putting on airs. Really putting on airs. Anyone who didn't know would think we were close or something. I'm the kind of person who holds grudges like crazy. If I'm snubbed once, I'll never forgive it for the rest of my life. Why isn't Madame Yuan with Madame Yi today? Madame Yi had something to attend to. She has things to do all the time. But Madame Yuan still stays by her side. I turned to the side, and he turned to the side as well. He was much taller than I was, and when he lowered his head to speak, his breath stirred my bangs, tickling me faintly. This was going too far. He was clearly forcing me to admit that I couldn't keep up with the depth of their conversation. I pressed my lips together and remained silent. Pei Junyang spoke timidly. Third brother, you've said so much today. Pei Hongju shut his mouth. I stepped out of the pavilion and jogged toward the other end of the garden. Everyone else said that third young master Pei was taciturn and paid no mind to people, so why was I the unlucky one, being needled by him every single day? I am kind to everyone, he said. Miss Yuan, your intentions are too obvious. I'm afraid things may not go as you wish. I said my wish is to marry into a good family, he said again. Madame Yuan, why don't you learn from Madame Yi and have a bit of ambition? During archery and riding class, I twisted my ankle, and he just happened to be standing right behind me. I accidentally leaned into his arms, and he wrapped an arm around my waist. After a moment, as if tossing away something, he seemed to want to throw me out. Whenever I went to the front row to talk to Yi Ruhua, he would always be watching from the side. Once I wanted to speak with the other young master. I was always afraid of his gaze deep down and didn't dare use my little tricks. How to be as gentle as water, how to flatter a young master. I've specially studied all that. He blocked every bit of it with his presence as this fiendish god. I was marching along angrily. Miss Yuan, I turned around and looked. Second young master, Jingxi Garden. Miss Yuan, have you gotten lost? You seem rather flustered. Pei Erlang was the eldest son of the secondary branch born to a concubine. It was said that he had a minor ailment in his leg. With his family background and imperfections, he was not out of reach. First on father's list. Yes, a little. I just got separated from the others. The Pei residence is truly enormous. I tucked in my chin, while slightly furrowing my brows to make my double eyelids more pronounced. My voice was also much softer than when I had just spoken with Pei Sanlang. Pei Erlang smiled faintly. For some reason, I saw a trace of hua in his entirely different features. This estate is rather large. In the past, even guests have gotten lost here. Madame Yuan, please follow me. I presume you are looking for Madame Yi. Yes, following him. I lagged half a step behind, secretly watching his stride. There didn't seem to be any sign of illness at all, for everyone gathered together again. Pei Junyang and Pei Sanlang had arrived at some point. Pei Erlang and I entered one after the other, drawing many curious looks, with Pei Sanlang's being the most conspicuous. Pei Junyang moved closer to me. Second brother is very special toward Miss Yuan. In the past, he was unwilling to walk alone with anyone. I feigned surprise, delighted in my heart. Father, half the great undertaking is already done. Yi Ruhua withdrew from the crowd and came up close to me. Shu Shu, did you go fly a kite? Just now, for some reason, I was too afraid to meet her eyes yesterday. She told me that she wanted to stay with me. In the past, there were never any young ladies to keep me company. This year, I can finally be with Shu Shu, but I came late and saw her talking with the young men. After turning it over in my mind several times, I left her behind and went off to play with the other little girls. I sidestepped the main issue. I didn't fly a kite. I drew one but didn't have time to fly it yet, so. That doesn't really count as lying, does it? Pei Hongju crossed his arms and walked up beside me, squeezing himself between me and Juniang. He left behind one sentence before walking away. Madam Yuan, you are very skilled with words. Yi Ruhua's relaxed expression turned thoughtful again. I gritted my teeth. Why does he always have that deadpan look? Pei Junyang squeezed in again, and it felt so crowded beside me. Third brother really had a lot to say to sixth sister today. Before I could figure out how to dispel Hua's thoughts, I heard her cautious voice. Shu Shu, will you sit with me later? I lowered my head to look at Yi Ruhua. She was slender and delicate, exactly the weak willow-in-the-wind figure admired by the scholars, and my long legs, slim waist, and pronounced curves only made me seem vulgar and gaudy. Sit, I, with my vulgar and gaudy looks, bravely sat beside the elegant Yi Ruhua. I had already compared myself with her 3 or 4 times in secret, and every time I lost. But what does this have to do with her? She doesn't know anything. Come to think of it, Yi Ruhua is probably the most complicated young lady I've ever known. Women in my dynasty can sit official examinations. If I had her talent, I would have been looking down my nose at everyone and gone straight for the exams long ago. Why bother learning all these roundabout, flattering things, and fuss over marriage? Comparing yourself to others really is getting off track. She had always kept a certain boundary and sense of propriety with her husband, but she had no backbone at all when it came to young ladies. Treat her a little better, and she'd bare her heart and soul, clinging on all too tightly. Hua, do you not have any older or younger sisters? She shook her head. Not even any maternal or paternal female cousins. She kept shaking her head. The Yi family is even more sparsely populated than the legends say. Then what did you play with when you were little? I studied the 5 classics and wrote policy essays. Me, so it's understandable that I can't compare, right? Your household's education of men and women is quite uniform. There is only a younger brother in the household. For the past 10-odd years, it was only me. A hint of sorrow seeped through the young lady's words, making her all the more pitiable. I turned to comfort her, only to meet Pei Erlang's tender, pained gaze. Good heavens! Does Pei Erlang also like Yi Ruhua? My thoughts broke off, and I could only say something dryly. You needn't be sad, though you have no playmate. There are plenty of people who like you. I was deeply disheartened. Just now, Pei Erlang had also been very gentle toward me. This single glance let me distinguish courtesy from sincerity. It turned out I had been imagining things. Partway through the banquet, Pei Sanlang, seated at the head, summoned someone over and gave a few instructions outside, then got up and left. He did not speak loudly, but everyone was paying close attention in secret. Before long, under everyone's watchful eyes, his attendant leisurely came over to this table. Lady Yi, Lady Yuan, this is the first dish of lychee preserve this spring. The lychee preserve from the Pei residence was famous, said to be a secret family recipe passed down by the chief wife's dowry chef. Moreover, this was probably not just the first dish from the Pei residence, but the first dish of lychee preserve in the entire city. First it was Pei Erlang, whom my father and I had taken a liking to, and now it was Pei Sanlang, someone my family had never even dared to dream of. I couldn't help but show envy toward the young lady beside me. My eyes even ached from it. Pei Sanlang, who was as hard and cold as iron toward everyone, came up with this romantic idea in full public view, carrying the sweet, soft fragrance of lychees. It was exactly the kind of scene I had once imagined while reading storybooks. She, however, did not understand what I meant and pushed the plate toward me. Shu Shu, You once said that you really wanted to try this snack from the Pei family. I tilted my head and looked at the plate of lychee cakes. It was indeed to my taste, and I knew without even tasting it that it would be delicious. Across the table, Meng Qianqian let out a cold laugh. Yi Ruhua, that was given to you by third young master Pei, and you're just going to hand it to someone else. When did I say it was for me? Yuan Liunyang has only been here for a few days and can hardly get in 2 words with Pei Sanlang. How could it be for her? She still seemed not satisfied. Still, it's good enough if Madame Yuan gets to tag along and have a few bites. Anyway, Madame Yuan is close to you. She put particular emphasis on tag along and close. As if she was saying that the reason I follow Yi Ruhua around is just to mooch off her things. Me, don't say it like that. But there's no need to make it so obvious, is there? Faint, almost imperceptible glances surged toward me, my face turned ashen, and I pretended not to care as I pushed the plate a little farther away. I haven't been able to eat sweets lately. Hua, you have it, I have backbone. I won't accept handouts like this, especially since this was a gift from the vindictive third young master Pei to the one he has a crush on. I choose not to get involved. On one side is the noble-born Meng Qianqian, and on the other is the exceptionally talented Yi Ruhua. No matter how much I tried to comfort myself, I was still only in my teens after all. Envy, jealousy, embarrassment, grievance, and an inexplicable sense of loss at that moment. All sorts of feelings welled up in my heart, tears welled up and swirled 3 times in my eyes, so I had no choice but to come out for some air under the pretext of changing clothes. Xiaoru was even angrier than I was as she twisted her handkerchief. It's all that third young master's fault. Why did he have to send that lychee preserve in full view of everyone, making you so terribly embarrassed, my lady? I won't eat lychees anymore. Peaches are pretty good too. I casually picked up a pebble and flicked it into the grass. It seemed to hit something. With a dull thud, Xiaoru and I exchanged a look, and the secrets and scandals of the inner residence, the body dumped in the grass in that instant. Countless storybooks rushed through my mind. The 2 of us turned and left, without looking back even once. 5 back at my seat, I felt a little more at ease. The plate of lychee fritters was still cooling in the middle of the table, and I reached out to push it farther away. A sweep of luxurious robes stopped before my eyes. I lifted my head and met his gaze. It was Pei Sanlang. His face was dark, and he couldn't stop looking at me. When had I offended him again under his gaze? I moved the plate a little farther away from me. Hua, eat a little more. He turned and walked away with his hands behind his back. I was practically about to feed it into the mouth of his beloved by then. Surely he'd be satisfied now. I lowered my head, but inside I was carefully pondering the words Meng Qianqian had once said to me. Even if you stay by her side every day, it's useless. With pearls and jade before them, the young lord's eyes won't notice anyone else. I had always been somewhat proud of myself, and Yin Yangzi and I were not even the same style. I was confident she would not be able to dim my brilliance. Thinking of this, I carefully stole a glance at her profile. No matter how you put it, I was prettier, but the 2 young masters of the Pei family only had eyes for her beside me. Father, these days a beautiful young lady like me, who only knows how to manage household affairs, is no longer in demand. For once, I felt a rare pang of self-disgust. Then, a sudden waft of fragrance swept over me. Miss Yuan, this is the peony I folded for you. A flower should be paired with a beauty. The moment I saw it, I felt it suited you. The young master of the Huan family had a slight flush on his face, and the flower was even a little wilted. It seemed he had folded it for a long time before giving it to me. Although the young master was not on father's list, he came from a very good family and was quite handsome and well behaved. Receiving his flower, I pretended to be casual as I felt the gazes around me. This was the kind of scene I had wanted when I came to the garden party. I took the not quite fresh peony with barely restrained excitement. Thank you for the gift, I like it very much, father. It's not that I'm not good enough, it's that the men of the Pei family have no eye for beauty. Yi Ruhua saw how delighted I was and hurriedly took my hand. Shushu, my family grows many peonies. Another day, I'll bring them all over and give them to you. Me, seeing her treat young Master Huan like an enemy, my girlish feelings really did seem rather presumptuous. I had gone through countless twists and turns in my mind, Yet she cared so deeply about me, this hypocritical friend. I sighed and patted her head. Hua hua, don't spend all your days only studying the 4 books and 5 classics, you should also study human nature. I had originally planned to stay away from her, but one sentence drew out my shame. 6 After the banquet, second young Master Pei found me. Miss Yuan, you are one of Miss Yi's rare good friends, a handsome young gentleman, gentle and refined as jade. It was a pity that compared with someone as flamboyant as third Master Pei, he always seemed to lack a little something. Miss Yi has had a very hard life, and I hope Miss Yuan will not let her down. I secretly curled my lip. How could I ever wrong Hua Hua? I'm not some roguish libertine. Love often means a constant ache in the heart, but second Master Pei seems to have picked the wrong person. If you can't even figure out the main issue, maybe you should first worry about whether you can outcompete third Master Pei. Seeing his wholehearted devotion to Hua Hua, I can only sigh and say what a devoted young master he is, but he was of no use to me. All the halo in my eyes had vanished. Go back and have father revise the list at once. This Pei residence was a bit too big, and after another turn, Pei third young master was waiting for me there. My heart suddenly tightened. No longer as calm and undisturbed as when I had just faced the second young Master Pei. This young master from the Pei family is really troublesome. If he has something to say, why not say it to Yi Ruhua himself? One after another he stood tall and elegant, with an outstanding bearing, but to me he was a spectre. I steeled myself and walked forward, and the spectre stared at me gloomily. Why don't you eat lychees? An opening I hadn't anticipated. I don't like eating it. His gaze was deep, churning with abyssal seas, and I hurriedly turned my head to look elsewhere. In the ensuing silence, even Shiru had petrified and didn't dare move. He suddenly let out a laugh. Does a flower like this really deserve Yuan Nyangzi to cherish it so much? It's nothing more than an ordinary thing placed along the corridor in the estate. I felt my blood surge. What's wrong with you, Pei Sanlang? Nothing good ever comes out of a dog's mouth. Whenever he finds me, he never has anything nice to say. I'm leaving, please step aside. I took a step forward, and he didn't let me get any closer. Our bodies suddenly drew near, and our breaths intertwined. Lady Yuan has never seen the finest flowers before, the best peony is in my courtyard. I stepped back half a pace and couldn't help glaring at him. No matter how good other people's things are, I'm not envious, I just like this flower. He took another step forward, and the scent on him drifted over, mixed with the sweet fragrance of lychee and some kind of youthful tartness. Didn't Miss Yuan say she wanted the best? I thought to myself, what nonsense was he saying? But my rebuttal came out faster than my brain could keep up. What do you mean by the best? What I like is the best, but you used to say you loved lychees the most. Not anymore. Can't a person's tastes change? Completely baffling, utterly incomprehensible. I told people I liked lychees because they were expensive and rare. A peach within easy reach is better than sincerity. You don't need to worry. Third Master Pei, no matter how good those lychees are, I won't touch even a single one. They're all being saved for your Yi Nyangzi. He kept at it, nothing more than being afraid I'd affect his Yi Nyangzi, so I had no choice but to make things clear. He said nothing, and when I bent my elbow to shove him, he stepped aside half a pace, finally managed to get on the carriage. His attendants came running up, a whole line of them, carrying a row of enormous peonies in full bloom. Miss Yuan, my young master specially sent these to you and Miss Yis. I couldn't be bothered to listen to the rest and signaled Shiru to lower the curtain. Yi Ruhua had just said that her family grew many peonies, and he immediately hurried over to send peonies. He even had to borrow my family's carriage just to deliver flowers. He took a roundabout route halfway around the city to the Yi residence, had the servants unload the flowers, and then left. Madam, those were the most precious Yarrow Huang and Wei Zi peonies. They said they were sent for you and Miss Yi. So it should be fine for us to keep 2 pots, shouldn't it? I don't want to. What's so great about that? I don't even know what I'm angry about. In any case, I just felt a knot of frustration in my chest that evening. I even ate half a bowl less than usual. The whole family looked at me worriedly, and I reined in my anger. Father, finding a middle-ranking aristocratic family wouldn't be bad either. The young master of the Pei family made me feel inferior to the prominent clans. and made me want to stay away. 7. During the 10-day break, I brought a gift I truly liked and went to the Yi family. The Yi family's courtyard was simple and plain, and the mistress even had to wash the laundry herself. Father Yi was quite composed, devoting himself wholeheartedly to the sea of books, and even dragging along the frail Yi Ruhua. It was only when he saw me arrive that he was willing to give her half a day off. Mother, just let the servants do these things. Your health isn't good, and you shouldn't be touching cold water when there's nothing to do on ordinary days. What else would you do besides this? You, a young girl, need to learn how to be thrifty and manage a household. Lord Yi did not let his daughter work, but he did not voice any objection either. Even when life isn't hard, they insist on finding some hardship to endure. What a pair of odd parents. I wrongly blamed Pei Erlang. What he said about Hua Hua having a hard life was not nonsense. The peonies sent by Pei Sanlang were being carefully tended in the courtyard, and I took a look at them from afar. Hua Hua, from now on I won't go looking for you at the academy. If you miss me, then come find me at the back gate. Why, all right, she is so intelligent that I don't need to spell it out. I squeezed her hand. It's not as if there's only the academy, we can play together in private later. I opened the hairpin and silk handkerchief I brought her. They were all made by my own hands. This is what I truly love. The pastries I used to bring her were all prepared by my mother for me, and I shamelessly offered borrowed blossoms to honor the Buddha. I have my own path, and Hua Hua has hers, but that doesn't stop us from becoming good friends. After all, she is a kind and sincere young lady. After the 10-day break, I no longer crowded into the front row. Pei Sanlang, contrary to his usual behavior, passed before my eyes every day, and I simply acted as if I couldn't see him. Not having to play a supporting role in someone else's story did, as expected, make me feel much less awkward. Meng Qianqian even mockingly complimented me, saying I was more beautiful than before. She did have some eye for things. I'm not going. Pei Erlang is more anxious than anyone. He privately asked me whether I was at odds with Miss Yi. I glanced at him irritably, but when someone saw us, it turned into the two of us having a very close private relationship, and the rumor reached Second Madam's ears. Pei Erlang has reached the age to be betrothed, and as his legitimate mother, she used this as an opening to come probe me. The mistress of the main branch spoke with her. Miss Yuan is quite good indeed. Her virtue, speech, appearance, and skills are all first-rate. Both her father and elder brother hold positions in court, and her second brother has already entered the military. He is the top choice among the martial selections. My second brother. When did that happen? Pei Sanlang tightly covered my mouth, his chest pressed against my back, and I could feel the heat from his body coming over and over again. My face flushed bright red as I kept pushing him away, but he leaned in close to my ear. You two have no sense of propriety when you're together. The family is even considering arranging an engagement between you and my second brother. His eyelashes brushed lightly against the skin behind my ear, stirring a tickling sensation. I lifted my hand to scratch the spot, only to accidentally slap him hard across the cheek with the back of my hand. What does it have to do with you? His tone was hurried. You're willing. I lifted my chin arrogantly. Second young master is quite good, why wouldn't I be willing? His face flushed red, and even his breathing grew heavier. I almost laughed out loud. I gave all the peonies he sent that day to the Yi family, and when I returned to my room I found there was a bowl of peach soup on the table. Shuru said the coachman found it behind the carriage table. The peaches are not yet in season to ripen. Even with plenty of honey and sugar, they cannot conceal that immature tartness. The white porcelain jar was carefully wrapped in cotton cloth, but the peach compote had still gone cold. I laughed. The ranking in the Pei family clan school was just as hierarchically distinct as father's official rank in the imperial court, with those below looking up to show loyalty, and those above lowering their heads to bestow favor. I lowered my head and did not look at the sky. Wanting both his wholehearted devotion and his favor, I broke free from his embrace. Third young master, thank you for letting me hear this good news. I'm going home. I turned around, feeling dizzy on the high platform, and punched him again. I can't get down. He laughed softly, leaped lightly down from the high platform, then turned around and spread his arms, waiting to carry me down. Apparently thinking I would be too shy to dare, I reached out to him. My fair slender arms faintly visible behind the sheer gauze, until my skin pressed against his neck with nothing in between. The cold and hard Pei Sanlang's ears were now red as if they might drip blood. I can no longer remember what I was supposed to say to you. I went home and hurried excitedly toward my second brother's courtyard. He was packing his luggage. Since childhood, he had been aloof and independent, unwilling to let mother help him with his arrangements. I moved closer and took his arm. Second brother, you don't have to work so hard. I've already caught myself a husband from the Pei family. He stopped moving and pinched my cheek with his dirty hand. If a woman has capable father and brothers, why would our Shushu ever need to suffer such wrongs? He had never been so openly emotional before. For a moment, I froze and didn't dodge his dirty hand. I'm not really that wronged, I guess. At night he took me up to the roof eaves to look at the night view. I had begged him for so long before, and he had never been willing. Only now, before leaving, did he bring me to see it once. The wind on the eaves was cold, and I hid behind second brother, shivering from the cold. Unexpectedly, eldest brother's study was still lit. Thinking to ease the sorrow of parting, I spoke lightly. Big brother used to hate reading the most. Has he been hiding storybooks in the study? Second brother patted my head. Big brother is going to take part in the literary selection and has already made it into the third round. I was so startled I nearly fell off the roof. Why did no one tell me? I thought it over and said, so my clumsy seventh sister is learning embroidery. I went to the Pei clan school for only a few months, and in that time, a huge upheaval took place in my family. Second brother nodded. That night, I leaned against second brother's broad shoulder, my eyes burning with tears. Father, mother, our family is going to prosper. 8. The next day, Pei Erlang came to see me again. Miss Yuan is very good. I'm willing to marry you. It's just that silently, I filled in the rest for him. It's just that there is someone in your heart. He stumbled over his words and couldn't speak clearly. He likes hua hua, but it's useless. I never agreed to this marriage. If the young master doesn't like me, why marry me? My parents brought it up. I interrupted him. My parents never did. This is truly rude. Hongzhong only meant to ask for your opinion, Miss Yuan. He bowed, and I took a big step back. It seemed like hurried footsteps were drawing closer and closer. My ears perked up, and I immediately put away my mocking expression. Young master, you are refined and courteous. Of course, I would be willing. The man grabbed my wrist tightly. Yuan Jinshu, third brother. Pei Sanlang didn't even look at him and, as if carrying an object, took me away. Why did you tell him you were willing? I collapsed against him and only barely managed to stand up. Why are you unwilling? Second young master has excellent family background, looks, and talent. He kept holding my wrist the entire time, and I pretended not to notice. You're simply, can't you at least have some ambition and ideals? I'm just a young girl. I only thought that when I came of age, I'd marry into a good family. So this is what you call good? Clearly, you said. What did I say? I slowly pulled his hand away, tears brimming in my eyes. Third young master, you may dislike me, and there's nothing I can do about that, but you can't stop other people from marrying me. Can you? When have I ever shown you hostility? On the first day, when I asked who you were, I still remember the look in your eyes. I looked at him with plaintive resentment until he turned his head away. I know you admire Miss Yi and dislike that I borrowed her to curry favor with the powerful. I've already stayed away from her, so I hope third young master will stop hounding me. Who knows, we may not even be family in the future. I wish you and Madam Yi. He suddenly bent down and kissed me, his lips covering mine, his two iron arms as if they wanted to press me into his embrace. My cheeks were flushed red, and I was gasping for breath. He rested his head by my neck. Yuan Jinshu, I am fond of you. Don't push me toward someone else. Don't marry him. Marry me. 9. I slapped him, and my hand hurt, but I felt relieved inside. The all-powerful Pei Sanlang. Times have changed at last. I let him hold my hand and blow on it while rubbing it. What about the things you said about me before? I was wrong. I was talking nonsense. I just didn't want you laughing and talking with other men. I kept waiting for you to come find me, but you didn't want to speak to me. No matter what I said or did, you refused to pay me any mind. I have absolutely no improper thoughts toward Miss Yi. I learned how to make that lychee preserve with my own hands just to make it for you. The peony was also meant for you. Did you not see the peach soup I sent you? I made it right after I heard you say that day." He looked at me anxiously, but I only stared at the gold thread embroidery along his collar. If I didn't have such self-control, my face would have twisted from smiling. I frowned, my voice full of sorrow. "With you treating me like this, how could I possibly trust you? Your status is lofty, and I am not worthy to aspire to you. I only ask that third young master stop making a joke of me." "Shoo shoo, I was wrong, third young master. Please do not call me that. Since when have you and I been so close?" This naturally made his heart ache with sorrow. That day I shook him off, and the next day I saw Pei Erlang again. He said that he and I were not meant to be, and feared he could not become engaged to me. It was never anything certain to begin with, so I did not take it to heart at all. I was certain I had the upper hand over Pei third young master. Why would I want the murky, unclear Pei second young master? Pei third young master bribes me every day with the finest things. When has my little courtyard ever seen so many precious items? "Shoo shoo, you've been in a very good mood lately." I was so over the moon that I blurted it out too. "Hua hua, the bright moon that once hung high in the sky is now within easy reach, so of course I'm in a good mood." I didn't expect to turn around and see Pei Hongju holding a gift in his hand, his face dark. "You tricked me like this. You knew long ago that I admired you, yet you still said things to upset me. Yuan Lianyang, you don't like me, but you do like Pei Sanlang's fame and reputation." I felt a little guilty, but I still thought I hadn't done anything wrong. "But isn't the reputation of Pei Sanlang outside the household also part of you?" His voice trembled a little. "If it were anyone else, it would be the same." I didn't answer him right away. Pei Sanlang's good name was too many to count, and each one fit perfectly with my imagination of the husband I hoped to have someday. I had never thought of separating him from those titles. He didn't step out of the courtyard gate for 3 whole days, and never brought up anything else. No one knew he had once said, "Marry me." I silently took back the congratulatory letter I had written for second brother. Even the duck that was already about to go into my mouth grew wings and flew away. Things succeed through secrecy and fail through disclosure. I've really taken that lesson to heart, Shuru, and I sealed and packed those things up again. I picked up my pen, and after a long while, I had only written 2 words, "Sorry." Although I didn't feel particularly sorry, there was no need to fall out with Pei Sanlang. A person like him would only grow even more powerful in the future. If I couldn't have him, there was no need to offend him. It wasn't appropriate to send them so openly, so I had to entrust Hua Hua to bring the items to him. I still feel deeply regretful in my heart. Pei Sanlang was the first man I ever admired. Ever since I first saw him, his shadow has always lingered in my heart. No matter how much I told myself to stay clear-headed, I still couldn't help but long for the moon's favor. But regrettably, I will never be able to understand his persistence, just as on that day I stood outside the pavilion and watched him discussing state affairs with Hua Hua. I can only watch from afar. We were probably never meant to be. On the day I sent the gift back, I took leave and stayed home. With a clang, he vaulted in through the window, his clothes in disarray. "Yuan Lianyang, you're going to drive me to my death. 2 days, only 2 days, not even 9 shichen, and you already want to part ways with me. Why are you being so cruel to me? My reputation, power, wealth, and even my looks, you don't want any of them. There's no one in the whole city who can compare to my husband. Do you have no eye for quality?" I froze. "You weren't." He hugged me tightly, and faint wisps of blood drifted out from within his clothes. "The family has already agreed to our marriage. Don't abandon me." From then on, I no longer looked up at the moon, nor felt inferior for living in this world. The brightest moon had already entered my arms after hearing the first story above. What are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. I have been granted a marriage. My betrothed is the heir of the Duke of Zhonghua, Guci, the famously unattainable flower of the capital. Overnight, I became the object of envy and resentment among the noble ladies of the capital. But only I know that this marriage is nothing but a gilded facade, because Guci has someone in his heart, the kind he yearns for. But Cannot have, how would I know? I have the omniscient perspective, but why is he not going to comfort his unattainable love, and instead pestering me every day? Your Highness, the noble consort's people are still waiting outside. I clutched my collar tightly, my voice trembling as I spoke. Guci's face flushed crimson, his gaze fixed intently on me. They have already been sent away. My lady, let us continue. On the day the imperial decree was announced, the entire Jiang household was filled with joy. Father was so excited that he stroked his goatee, his hand trembling behind his back. Mother also walked briskly toward the small prayer hall. Everyone is very satisfied with this marriage, except for me. Why? Because I transmigrated into a book. As long as you behave properly and don't harbor any delusions, I will grant you the honor of being the wife of the heir. Otherwise, don't blame me for turning ruthless. After saying this, Guci turned and left the bridal chamber, leaving Jiang Wn alone to weep until dawn. This is how the book describes Jiang Wan's wedding night. At this moment in the bridal chamber, I sit in the center of the wedding bed, the bright red veil hanging down to my chest. Creaked. The door to the bridal chamber finally moved. I immediately straightened my posture. Hurry up, let's finish the lines and wrap this up. Suddenly, the weight on my head lifted as the red veil was lifted away. The light of the candle flame struck straight into the eyes. When he looked up again, a man stood before him. The man had sharp brows and bright eyes, his phoenix-like gaze slightly narrowed, dressed in a bright red wedding robe. Even someone who was usually aloof and self-possessed was tinged with a hint of worldly warmth, truly worthy of being the male lead's rival. This face lives up to the title of the male lead's rival. I don't know if it's because I'm so hungry that my vision is blurry, but I feel like he's in a rather good mood right now, with even the tips of his eyebrows carrying a hint of warmth. Gurgle, a dull thud shattered the silence of the room. Hungry, that was my oversight. His tone carried genuine apology as he turned and called out to the door, bring in the meal. Embarrassed? Not a chance. I'm not embarrassed, it's others who should be. Ignoring Guci's stifled laughter, I plopped down at the dining table. After a few bites of food, I finally felt like I had come back to life. Looking up, I happened to meet Guci's gaze. The warmth in the corners of his eyes seemed to have deepened a little more. With my appetite satisfied and the meal finished, I set down my chopsticks and was about to stand up. Let's drink the wedding cup. Guci spoke softly from across the table, a hint of barely noticeable laughter trailing in his tone. I paused for a moment, then glanced down at the table. The bowls and chopsticks on the table had been cleared away at some point, leaving only 2 red-glazed wine cups. As the wine slid down my throat, I couldn't help but wonder, was this part in the book? The meal was eaten, the wine was drunk, now it was time for the main event. I stared unblinkingly at Guci, waiting for him to finish his lines so we could wrap things up. However, Guci suddenly let out a low chuckle. He began to leisurely untie the sash of his outer robe. As his collar loosened slightly, he lifted his gaze to me, a hint of amusement still shimmering in his eyes. It's my fault for making my wife wait so impatiently, aren't you? Supposed to tell me not to daydream, then slam the door and leave? Why aren't you following the script? The key is, how am I supposed to respond? I was frantically complaining in my heart, and when I looked up again, I felt a sudden warmth in my nose. Guci stripped down to just his undergarments, revealing an exceptionally fine physique, broad shoulders, a narrow waist, long legs, 8-pack abs, plus 2 sexy lines of the Adonis belt. Is this something I can watch without paying? I quickly turned my face away, but my ears betrayed me by growing warm. What are you doing taking your clothes off? I raised my voice, trying to sound a bit more imposing, yet I couldn't quite hide the tremor in my tone. Guci chuckled softly, his cool voice tinged with a husky undertone. My lady, a moment of spring night is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. Before the words had fully faded, his palm had already settled on my shoulder, a warm breath drifting over. Let us do something meaningful. A hand pressed lightly on my shoulder, the force not heavy, yet carrying an undeniable insistence. Before I could even struggle free, my back was already pressed against the soft bedding. I raised my hands to push him, but he remained as immovable as Mount Tai, only his Adam's apple rolling ever so slightly. And then my wrist was gently grasped by him when his gaze fell upon me, his eyelashes cast a small shadow beneath his eyes, his dark pupils deep and unfathomable breaths intertwined, carrying a cautious sense of exploration. The touch of our lips was light. So light that I could even feel the faint tremor of his eyelashes brushing against my cheek. My mind went blank for a moment, and by the time I thought to turn my head away, he had already deepened the kiss. As my consciousness began to sink, a thought crossed my mind. Did I read a fake book? The lingering passion continues. My lady, does this feel good? How about this? Shut up. So much nonsense. I gritted my teeth, holding back the rest of my complaint. My temper flared, rising half a foot high, and I suddenly bit down hard on his lips. A low, hoarse chuckle escaped his throat. So it turns out my lady likes it this way. The storm raged all night, and the crabapple petals outside the window grew even more crimson under the soaking rain. When daylight broke, Guci, dressed in his bright red wedding robe with his hair meticulously styled, had regained his usual aloof and composed demeanor. I sat before the bronze mirror, supporting my sore and weary waist as I did my makeup, all the while inwardly venting my frustrations. Where's the promised devoted second male lead? The character's personality has completely collapsed. Your Highness, it was Guci's personal attendant, Qing Jian. Guci glanced at me, then stood up and walked to the corridor. A sudden flash of inspiration struck. I know how to answer this. The White Moonlight heroine has an appointment, and Guci is about to go meet her. The book mentioned that on her wedding night, Jiang Wn was left alone all night, and the next day, when she served tea alone, she was deliberately made things difficult by the elders of the Gu family. From then on, she was mocked by everyone in the Duke's household, became the laughingstock of the entire capital, could never hold her head high again, and eventually died of depression. Just as her mind was wandering with wild thoughts, the two men's conversation drifted intermittently from beneath the corridor. Your Highness, her ladyship has sent a message, Qing Jian's voice carried a hint of cautious hesitation. Go and decline it. From now on, let her make her own decisions in such matters. Now that I am married, I cannot continue to worry about her every little thing as I did before. Do not send any more letters in the future. The last few words were spoken softly, yet carried an unyielding sense of distance. What's going on? How dare he draw a clear line with the female lead? This is not how a male supporting character should behave. My lady, if you are ready, let us go over. Guci's voice interrupted my train of thought. I abruptly looked up and met his gaze in the mirror. I had long mustered the courage to face the torment of the Gu family elders. This guy is deviating from the script again, but unexpected as it was, having him standing by my side during the tea ceremony gave me an invisible boost of confidence. As I took my seat, seeing the approval in the eyes of the elders in the hall, it seemed I had firmly secured my position as the wife of the heir. I stole a glance at the person beside me, grateful for his seemingly casual actions, but why had he deviated from his character? After returning to my room, I sat amidst a pile of greeting gifts. Look at this. This imperial green jade bracelet, conservatively estimated, must be worth at least 5,000 taels of silver. Ah, what's this thin thing? A 5,000 tael silver note. Heavens above, is this wave of heavenly wealth finally going to come my way? I couldn't put down that pair of green jade bracelets in modern times. I could only gaze at them longingly through glass display cases. I was so captivated that I didn't notice Guci's thoughtful gaze. That day, as I yawned while holding a book, I nearly dropped it on my face when I caught sight of the moon-white figure in the corridor from the corner of my eye. Why is Guci here again? As someone who transmigrated into this book, I know full well the ironclad rule that the second male lead belongs to the female protagonist. Ever since I received the imperial decree, I've set 3 principles for myself. Don't draw attention, don't get involved in the affairs between the second male lead and the female protagonist, and quietly wait for the second male lead to divorce me for his white moonlight, so I can take my dowry and run. But ever since our wedding night, Guci has been acting strange. He shows not the slightest intention of remaining chaste for the female lead, fierce and relentless in bed, gentle and considerate out of it, leaving me with sore back and weak legs all day long. My lady, the Osman thus cakes you love are here, fresh out of the oven. He walked in carrying the food box, his eyes lighting up when he saw me. You've gone to so much trouble, my lord, I replied dryly, just about to find an excuse to retreat to the inner chamber when my wrist was gently grasped. His fingertips were slightly cool, but his grip was very light. You always avoid me, Guci's voice lowered slightly, carrying a hint of barely noticeable grievance. Did I do something wrong? I nearly choked on my own saliva. Bro, don't you realize how clingy you are? No, my lord, you worry too much. I tried to withdraw my hand, but it wouldn't budge. I picked out something for you, my lady. See if you like it. With that, he pulled a brocade box from his sleeve. Just by looking at the packaging, you could tell it wasn't something ordinary inside. I immediately sat back down obediently. Who would turn down money when the brocade box was opened? The gilded light nearly dazzled my eyes. It is a vermilion gold and kingfisher feather hairpin, with pearls the size of rice grains adorning the phoenix's tail feathers, rustling softly when shaken. Just as my fingertips brushed against the tassels of the hairpin, I heard him whisper, "Last time, I noticed you staring at the kingfisher feather jewelry in the shop, so I specially had someone modify it to match the style. The phoenix's eyes are set with pigeon's blood rubies, which complement your complexion even more. I hope it meets your satisfaction." I gently picked up the hairpin and held it against my temple, feigning reserve as I said, "Not bad." He chuckled softly, took the hairpin, and carefully inserted it into my hair. As he withdrew his hand, his fingertip brushed against my earlobe, sending a tingling sensation through me. "You were lamenting that the material for the phoenix's eyes wasn't chosen well. You even ate a few bites less at dinner." I was taken aback for a moment, gazing at his face so close to mine, and suddenly felt a bit lost. "Why are you so attentive to me? You clearly have someone you love, yet you still shower me with attention, so fickle and two-faced. You're just a big scoundrel." The Mid-Autumn Palace banquet was in full swing, with gilded candlelight casting a shimmering glow throughout the hall. I sat at the banquet, my fingertips lightly tapping the jade cup, my peripheral gaze fixed on the legendary white moonlight. Imperial consort Xiao Ninga, she wore a crimson palace gown, a delicate begonia flower pinned at her temple, her eyes and brows exuding a captivating charm. Among the palace consorts, she truly possessed an aura that was unforgettable at first glance. I instinctively stole a glance at Guci. The main event was about to begin in the original story. During this banquet, Guci followed Xiao Ninga into the imperial garden. The two of them embraced each other, weeping bitterly as they poured out the pain of their separation. As for me, I had to hide behind the rockery, shedding silent tears. Being the one who was out of place, I kept an eye on the two of them, ready at any moment to step in and play the role of a mere tool. But I waited and waited, and for a long time, I didn't see the two of them get up and leave. Guci was lowering his head to peel an orange for me, his slender fingers stained with orange juice, gleaming white like jade. He brought the peeled orange segment to my lips, his voice gentle. "Try it, it's sweet." I looked at the orange segment so close at hand, then glanced at Xiao Ninga, who was frequently looking over from not far away, and decided to actively advance the plot, clearing my throat lightly. It seems the noble consort has something to discuss with you. Aren't you going to greet her?" He gave a non-committal but his hands didn't stop moving. He peeled another segment and handed it over. "Finish eating first, then we'll talk." Xiao Ninga clearly saw this too. Holding her wine glass, she raised it in a distant toast toward our direction, her gaze darkening slightly. Guci didn't even lift an eyelid, focusing entirely on serving me food: shrimp peeled and deveined, fish meticulously picked clean of bones, as if, among all the guests in the grand hall, I were the only one who existed. As I chewed on the orange, alarms blared in my mind. Was he deliberately using me to provoke his white moonlight? Scumbag! Suddenly, a palace maid accidentally spilled tea, wetting the hem of Guci's robe. "Please forgive me, Your Highness. This servant deserves death." The palace maid hurriedly begged for forgiveness. "Please follow this servant to change your clothes." Guci rose with a gloomy expression and left the main hall. Not long after, Xiao Ninga also stood up and departed finally. It was my turn, the tool character, to make an entrance behind the rockery. I indeed witnessed the classic scene of unforgettable old affections. Xiao Ninga saw Guci, her eyes instantly reddening, her voice choked with tears. Aki, are you really going to ignore me? You clearly still have me in your heart. Guci remained silent for a moment, his voice as cold as frost under the moonlight. Since your ladyship has entered the palace to serve his majesty, you should abide by the palace rules. I, as a subject, have also married and started a family, and must uphold the duties of a husband. Upon hearing this, Xiao Ninga burst into tears, her tone filled with disbelief. I don't believe you've forgotten our past. Guci raised his hand, as if wanting to wipe away her tears. My heart instantly leaped into my throat. Here it comes. Here it comes. As expected, old feelings are hard to sever, but in the next moment, his hand paused mid-air, and he instead pulled a handkerchief from his sleeve. I focused my gaze and nearly jumped out from behind the rockery. Wasn't that the handkerchief I had ruined with my embroidery last night? The mandarin duck's wings were crooked and had a hole in them, so I casually tossed it onto the dressing table to think he had picked it up. My wife's embroidery skills are still rudimentary, and the handkerchief is rather crudely made. I hope your highness will not laugh at it. His tone was calm, without the slightest ripple, as if he was speaking of the most ordinary matter. Xiao Ninga stood frozen in place, the tears on her face forgotten. I froze too. Had the plot derailed again? Rubbing my numb legs from squatting too long, I shakily rose to my feet. As I turned my head, a dark figure appeared before me, startling me so much I nearly screamed. Guci crossed his arms, raising an eyebrow as he looked at me. My lady, squatting here like this, are you? I awkwardly waved my paw, trying to brush it off. What a coincidence. Husband, are you also out for some fresh air? In the carriage on the way back to the estate, the interior was so quiet you could hear each other's breathing. Guci suddenly spoke up. My lady, don't you have anything to ask? I immediately chimed in. Yes, husband. What is your relationship with Her Highness? He lowered his gaze to look at me, then suddenly reached out and took my hand. She was my former fiancée. Why wasn't this part written in the plot? After I went missing on the battlefield, she entered the palace and became a consort. Could it be that she was forcibly taken by the emperor? I originally thought she was forced, but I only learned recently that she voluntarily requested to enter the palace. If that's the case, why in the original plot did Guci join forces with Xiao Ninga to poison the emperor and become the regent himself? My lady, his voice was low, carrying a tone of seriousness. From now on, there will be no more connection between her and me. Suddenly, Guci placed my hand over his heart. In here, there is only you, my lady. The warm sensation spread, and my face flushed instantly, even my ears burning with heat. I lowered my gaze. Can I trust you, Guci? Before I knew it, the new year was approaching, with the palace banquet approaching once again. Could the female lead really be willing to let go of Guci? Such a convenient tool. As expected, at the palace banquet, my clothes were accidentally stained by a palace maid, just as I had anticipated. Madam, please allow this servant to take you to change your clothes. The palace maid in pink attire pleaded for forgiveness. I instantly became alert and sternly refused her. No need, but she persisted, refusing to give up, and began to sob softly, drawing the attention of those around us. Let's go. I knew I couldn't remain in this stalemate any longer, so I mustered all my focus and followed her out of the palace hall. The lanterns along the corridor flickered, casting the maid's shadow long and wavering. What trick would come next? Accusing me of having an affair? The palace maid kept her head lowered, her expression unreadable. As we reached the corner of the corridor, the armor of the guards on both sides gleamed coldly under the palace lanterns. I suddenly halted, and the maid stumbled in her steps, her fingers instinctively twisting the cuffs of her sleeves. You may go. I raised my hand to hold down the hair at my temples, tousled by the night breeze, my gaze sweeping past the saber at the guard's waist. I'll just stay here and enjoy the wind for a while. Hearing this, she abruptly looked up, her face showing urgency. Madam, the place to change clothes hasn't been reached yet. No need. I interrupted her. lightly tapping my fingertips on the cool stone railing. The damp clothes, stirred by the wind, carried a crisp chill. This night breeze is just right, it'll dry in a quarter of an hour. But you, step back. I turned my face to the side, my gaze colliding directly with the panic in her eyes. What lay hidden there was not just alarm, but also a trace of barely restrained urgency. Though the two guards kept their eyes lowered, their ears were unmistakably twitching. "Madam," her voice trembled, but after glancing at the guards on either side, she finally turned and walked away, finding a stone step not far from the guards. I sat down and pulled a pink pouch from the hem of my robe. A faint smile touched my lips as I untied the pouch string with my fingertips and pulled out a piece of beef jerky wrapped in oiled paper. Just as I was chewing with relish, a sudden surge of heat flared up in my lower abdomen. Sure enough, it was that disgusting old trick again. Calmly, I fished out a yellow pouch, took out a black pill, and swallowed it in one gulp. This pill was no ordinary thing. I had bought it at a high price from a renowned doctor, and it could counteract all unknown drugs in just a moment. That scorching heat receded like it had been doused with cold water. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of the palace maid still lingering not far away, and I leisurely took another bite of the beef jerky, knowing there are tigers in the mountains, yet still heading toward them. That is not my way of doing things. A cannon fodder should have the awareness of cannon fodder, knowing when to back down. I sat right under the guards' watchful eyes and, when the banquet ended, slipped out of the palace unnoticed among the crowd. By the time I returned to the Duke's residence, the fragrance of osmanthus from the eaves had already soaked into the twilight. I placed the palace attire stained with tea on the table. At the palace banquet today, a palace maid spilled tea on me. I removed the jade hairpin from my hair, letting my dark tresses cascade over my shoulders. At first, I thought it was an accident, but I never expected that moments later, I would feel a burning heat spreading throughout my body. Guci's fingers paused over the dark, damp stain, his knuckles turning slightly pale. Yet, who stands behind that palace maid? As I finished speaking, I noticed his jawline growing even more taut. With so many eyes watching at the palace banquet, how dare they make a move? Guci's tone carried a barely suppressed edge of ferocity. The candlelight cast deep shadows in his eyes, and his usually cool, detached features now seemed coated with a thin layer of frost. "You have suffered, my lady. I will certainly give you an explanation for this matter." Guci's voice was as heavy as if soaked in ink. I looked at his tense jawline and suddenly smiled at this moment. The surging anger in his eyes seemed to carry a hint of genuine sincerity. "You are so thoughtful, my husband, if it truly turns out to be that noble consort who tampered with things, how would he handle it? Whether he has truly severed ties with his first love or is merely putting on a show will soon become clear." Madam, great news." The voice of my personal maid, Xiaotsue, was brimming with irrepressible excitement. Her face flushed as she exclaimed, Third Master has been transferred to the Ministry of Personnel as a Vice Minister." My hand, holding the celadon teacup, paused for a moment, and my heart skipped a beat. "Is it true?" I looked up at Xiaotsue. Third brother, got promoted. In the original book, this highly sought-after position ultimately ended up in the hands of the imperial consort's younger brother. "Madam, see if you like this." Guci magically produced a small trinket from his sleeve, a little squirrel holding a golden pearl, with crushed diamonds embedded in its tail, small and exquisite. "This is to amuse the lady, when bored on ordinary days, just rub it for fun." The squirrel's ears were carved from rose quartz, the cool sensation spreading up from the fingertips. The palace maid who fell into the water and drowned on the night of the palace banquet. The lead is broken. His voice was low, carrying a complex mix of emotions in its tone. Hearing this, my fingers, which had been stroking the squirrel's ears, paused. Some debts, once they involve that person, may not be so easily settled. It's just that the little squirrel, which had seemed so adorable moments ago, now felt rather dull and uninteresting to look at. After a moment of silence, Guci's gaze sharpened. "Nevertheless, it was ultimately the noble consort's negligence. I have already reprimanded her. Such incidents will definitely not happen again." Then he paused, his eyes returning to me, softening with a touch of gentleness. As for the grievances my lady has suffered, they must naturally be made up for. A few days ago, the Ministry of Personnel submitted a vacancy for a vice minister position, and I have already secured it for third brother. With that, he raised his teacup to his lips, not truly drinking, but merely stealing a glance at me from behind it, watching his ears perking up stealthily and the overly bright gleam in his eyes. I cleared my throat and spoke. Thank you, my husband. Do you find me particularly pleasing to the eye today? He suddenly leaned in, his nose almost touching my forehead, his warm breath falling on my brow. My husband is exceptionally wise and valiant every single day. I coughed twice, trying to create some distance. I just remembered there's something I haven't finished. With that, I stood up and hurried out of the door. I had to stay away from that male fox spirit, lest he bewitch my already wavering mind. Behind me, the man watched my flustered figure with eyes full of amusement at the Buddhist temple in the outskirts of the city. I followed my mother-in-law to offer incense. The night wind in the mountains is exceptionally cold. I sat in the room, resting my chin in my hands as I gazed at the night outside, admiring the unpolluted night sky, lost in my own thoughts. I didn't notice the wisps of white smoke drifting in through the crack in the door when I woke again. My wrists were bound behind my back in a stone chamber. I struggled to twist my body, the rough rope rubbing against my wrist bones, sending waves of sharp pain. Is anyone there? Where is this? But no matter how much I shouted until my throat was raw, I received no response at all. Time passed minute by minute, second by second, the stone chamber so quiet I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat. My throat gradually grew dry and painful. My stomach began to rumble. Hunger and thirst were like two invisible hands, tightly gripping my lifeline. I leaned against the stone wall, gasping for breath, my vision starting to blur. Better to have been hit by a car like in my past life, I murmured to myself, my eyelids heavy as if filled with lead. The last shred of consciousness swallowed by darkness. At the edge of consciousness, the sound of tap, tap, tap footsteps seemed to echo in my ears in the darkness. Water entered my mouth, finally soothing the painful dryness in my throat. When I opened my eyes again, what greeted me was not the cold stone walls, but the familiar azure-colored bed curtains. Is this a room in the Duke's residence? I struggled to lift my wrist, where only faint marks remained from the rope burns. Was I saved? Madam, you're awake. A familiar voice sounded in my ear, trembling with barely concealed ecstasy. I slowly turned my head and saw Guci striding quickly from the table, stopping at the bedside. He cautiously extended his hand, as if wanting to touch me, yet paused mid-air, his fingertips trembling slightly. A moment later, he gently grasped my wrist, his thumb tenderly caressing the faint rope marks on my skin. You're finally awake. His voice was filled with the relief of having survived a disaster, and his eyes were even slightly reddened. If you hadn't woken up, what would I have done? Looking at the glimmering light in his eyes, I thought perhaps he truly cared for me that day. As I was lying under a tree to cool off, I overheard people whispering outside the courtyard wall. Have you heard? The imperial consort who was so favored in the harem has been banished to the cold palace. Indeed, the whole capital is buzzing with the news, saying that consort is a deeply hidden venomous beauty who dared to harm the imperial heir in secret. With a thud, the fan in my hand fell to the ground. Has the female lead storyline also fallen apart? My lady, have some shrimp. I stared at the glistening shrimp meat between Guci's fingertips, instinctively opened my mouth, and swallowed it whole as I chewed. I wrestled with the dilemma, should I ask or not? Darling, eat your meal properly. Guci's gentle voice sounded by my ear, pulling my wandering thoughts back. I looked down to see the greens in my bowl nearly mashed to a pulp. Wasting food is shameful, especially in an era of scarce resources like ancient times. Let's ask after we finish eating. I picked up my chopsticks and ate quickly, glaring at Guci out of the corner of my eye. What are you looking at? Eat your food. I stammered as I began to speak. You may speak freely, my lady, Guci said with a gentle smile as he looked at me. Then I shall speak my mind. I heard the imperial consort has been confined to the cold palace, I said. all the while observing his expression. Sure enough, at the mention of the imperial consort, Guci's face instantly darkened, as if the very temperature around us had dropped several degrees. You scumbag, and you said I was the only one in your heart. Don't mention her. Guci's voice was icy and piercing. Why can't I mention her? Am I not worthy? I don't know if it's just my imagination, but I feel a tightness in my chest, a wave of bitterness washing over my heart. With a sharp crack, the teacup in Guci's hand shattered. If I'm not worthy, then so be it. Merely being consigned to the cold palace, what a lenient punishment for her. Don't worry, my dear, if she dares to harm you, I will make her regret ever crossing you. Wasn't she banished to the cold palace for harming the imperial heir? What does that have to do with me? Unless, I asked, puzzled. Could it be, I'm a princess in exile? I tightened my grip on my sleeve, my voice brimming with excitement and delight. So I am. Just as I was getting carried away, I met Guci's teasing yet doting gaze and instantly deflated. I was just joking. Turning around, I pretended to wipe the sweat from my forehead. Can't a person even daydream after calming my emotions? I sat down opposite Guci again. It was her who kidnapped me. This time, I didn't crack any jokes and spoke with certainty. That's right, she harmed the royal heir and wanted me to help cover it up. But I refused. In a moment of carelessness, she managed to abduct you. After that, I searched for your whereabouts while pretending to help her. I just never expected that she never intended to let you live from the very beginning. As he spoke, he stood up and walked over, reaching out to pull me into his embrace. Fortunately, I rescued you in time, otherwise I truly don't know what I might have done. Guci's tone was full of relief, with a trace of barely noticeable lingering fear. Feeling the trembling of the body beneath my palm, my eyes suddenly grew hot. Guci, I called out softly. I'm here, he responded, his voice filled with concern. I held him tightly with all my strength. Let's live well together from now on, I murmured. Perhaps I should trust him this once, and give myself a chance too. He didn't say a word, just lowered his head and kissed me. The lips were warm, carrying his unique scent. I am yours, he whispered, in this lifetime. I belong only to you. Outside the window, the wind and snow had ceased, and a bright full moon hung high in the sky inside the room. Red candles flickered, casting a scene of tender and enchanting springtime beauty. Some people, from the very beginning, are destined to be supporting characters in the story. Perhaps he was once a supporting character in someone else's story, but who isn't the protagonist of their own story? Another Mid-Autumn festival arrived, and I was diagnosed with a joyful pulse. My heart skipped a beat, and I turned to look at Guci. He stood frozen in place, his dark hair falling over his eyes as if he hadn't heard clearly. It wasn't until the imperial physician called out young master 3 times in a row that he suddenly snapped back to reality and hurried to my side. His Adam's apple bobbed several times before he finally spoke in a hoarse voice. My dear, we're going to have a child. I had been somewhat nervous myself, but seeing him like that, the tension in my heart instantly melted away. Throughout the entire pregnancy, Guci was extremely nervous, fearing even the slightest mishap, especially as the due date approached. He forbade me from doing this, and that it was truly infuriating. On this day, while he was out, I took my maid to admire the lotus by the river. Walking on the bluestone path, I slipped on some moss and fell. The moment I hit the ground, a classic saying flashed through my mind: nos were, no die. I was carried into the delivery room, where the midwives bustled around me, but the child stubbornly refused to make an appearance. As my consciousness began to fade, I suddenly heard Guci's voice, hoarse as if scraped by sandpaper. Save the mother, no matter what, you must save the consort. When the word save the mother struck my ears, tears instantly poured down my face, mingling with the cold sweat on my temples, and somehow gave me the strength to keep fighting. When I woke again, dusk had fallen outside the window, and Guci was keeping vigil by the bedside. His dark brocade robe was crumpled, his chin covered in stubble, and heavy shadows hung beneath his eyes. Seeing me open my eyes, he quickly grasped my hand, his tone unusually gentle. My dear, you're awake. We have a daughter now, with features that look just like you. My anxious heart finally settled, a slight smile curved my lips, and I drifted back into a deep sleep. Another Chishi festival arrived. With colorful lanterns hanging beneath the grapevines in the courtyard, our daughter was now able to toddle unsteadily. Seeing Guci return from outside, she stumbled over on her short little legs, threw herself at him, and looked up with her small face, calling out, "Daddy, hug." Guci hurried forward, bent down to pick her up, and planted a kiss on her forehead. He then turned to look at me, his eyes holding scattered stars, his voice gentle. "My lady, the moonlight is especially beautiful tonight. Why don't we take a man to admire the moon in the courtyard?" I smiled and nestled closer to him. Days flowed by slowly in such ordinary yet warm moments. Guci, extra story. Guci has been feeling something off lately. I've noticed that unfamiliar emotions and thoughts keep flashing through my mind uncontrollably. For instance, I only have feelings for my former fiancé, now the imperial consort Xiao Ninga, based on parental arrangements and matchmakers' words. Yet there's always a voice in my heart whispering, "She is the love of my life, worth protecting with everything I have." For instance, whenever Xiao Ninga wept before me, pouring out her deep affection and the hardships she faced in the palace, an inexplicable wave of pity and reluctance would always surge in my heart, and I would often find myself thoughtlessly agreeing to many of her requests. Yet this sense of pity was utterly unreasonable, for I knew full well she was lying. The calculation in the depths of her eyes was impossible to hide. The true alarm was sounded at the birthday banquet of the Xiao family's matriarch. Guided by the voice in my mind, I should have fallen deeply in love with Xiao Ninga the moment I met her. I should have even disregarded her status as a palace consort and pulled her into my arms. And indeed, events unfolded as expected. As Xiao Ninga passed by me, she accidentally stumbled, falling weakly toward me. I instinctively reached out to steady her, my hand meeting a soft warmth. She lifted her head, revealing that delicate, pitiful face of hers, her eyes shimmering as she timidly called out, "Aki." Her voice was gentle and melodious, stirring the imagination. Yet at this moment, my heart was a cold, tranquil stillness. The angle of her fall, the innocent look in her eyes, even the perfectly placed dust on her sleeve, all were as precise as a silent seduction, and I truly couldn't control the urge to pull her into my arms. My face wore an expression of pity and tenderness, but inside, a storm of emotions was raging. Just then, a young girl burst into view. When she saw me, she turned and fled like a startled rabbit, and I finally broke free from the loss of control, pushing Xiao Ninga away with a forceful shove. At the banquet, I unexpectedly spotted the young girl from earlier in the most secluded corner. Before her lay a plate of delicate mung bean cakes. She was carefully picking up a small piece, nibbling at it in tiny bites, her eyes curved into crescents, her expression as content as a cat sneaking a treat. At that moment, a deafening roar exploded in my mind. On one side, a meticulously calculated chance encounter, on the other, a genuinely adorable sneaky snack. The woman quietly enjoying her pastries in the corner was 1,000 times more pleasing to the eye than that insincere Xiao Ninga. I was absolutely certain I did not love Xiao Ninga. Guci, the esteemed heir of the Duke of Zhen, with illustrious military achievements and immense power, had become a mere puppet in my own emotions and life. For the first time, I so clearly wanted to break free from these invisible shackles. I want to personally feel the ones I love, rather than being swayed by a vague and elusive voice. After that, I began to pay attention to that woman, whether intentionally or unintentionally. It turned out she was the youngest legitimate daughter of the Jiang family, appearing dull in public but clever and cunning behind the scenes. It turns out, she values money above all else. It turns out, she is so adorable. Only in places where she is present can I maintain my true self and break free from the shackles. I personally requested the emperor to issue an imperial decree for our marriage, but after marriage, I discovered that she seemed to know something. She always avoided me when she mentioned Xiao Ninga. It wasn't out of testing or jealousy, but a genuine desire to push me away. She wanted to escape from me. This realization, like a needle, pierced my heart deeply. I couldn't let her continue misunderstanding like this. To be with her, I had finally managed to shake off that elusive voice. I absolutely could not let her slip away from me. Slowly, like the gentle spring rain, I seeped into her life drop by drop, letting her grow accustomed to my presence without even realizing it. And then later, when she actually began to show her true self in front of me, I knew that the high wall between us was slowly crumbling. Hearing her say with her own lips that she wanted to live well with me, I knew I had finally waited for this moment. She had finally fallen into the gentle haven I had carefully woven, and I was willing to spend the rest of my life protecting her and keeping her safe. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.